Hello and happy Tuesday, which is of course my book reviews day. And today I want to talk to you about A Fool's Hope by Mike Shackle, the second book in the Last War trilogy. Full disclosure, I am going to keep the general book review spoiler free. So if you have not read this, fear not. Yeah, I'm not even going to spoil the first novel. So if you haven't even read We Are the Dead, first of all, you should go check that out. I love that novel. Probably my favorite read of the year thus far. But I'm going to keep even the spoilers from that to an absolute minimum for this novel here. However, full disclosure, after I've given you a spoiler-free review, I'm going to kind of go into a little second part of the video where I am going to talk about some details with some light spoilers, but I am going to give you plenty of warning before that happens. That way, if you want to click off the video, you have plenty of time to do so. As I said, We Are the Dead is one of my favorite reads, if not my favorite read of the year thus far. Is a novel about the nation of Jaya, which was very quickly invaded by the Egro forces from the north. That is not a spoiler. This is just literally a setup for the first novel. And the first novel follows various characters in the aftermath of this invasion who are trying to break free from the Egro hold on their nation. And those characters are returning here in A Fool's Hope. This novel takes place immediately after the events of We Are the Dead. Just like many other grimdark novels, such as those by Joe Abercrombie and George R. R. Martin, we do follow multiple point-of-view characters. All your favorite characters from the first novel are back here, including Tinstra. Her character arc on her quest from the first novel is continuing strong for the first half of this novel. I will admit that about halfway through the novel, she sort of course corrects pretty sharply and becomes very unlikable for the second half. Like I said, I'm not going to spoil what happens, but man, I did not like her the second half around. Yaz, who is a single mother trying to do what's best for her family, has a very interesting arc in this novel. I enjoyed it. She was, just kind of a little maid trying to keep her head down in the first novel. After the events of the first novel, she is now dragged into even larger events with larger implications here within this novel. And she's kind of forced to, continue her growth as a character. I think it's interesting. Jax, our one-armed general, leader of the rebels, is back. Let me just say that after the events of the first novel, he has some serious PTSD, which, like I said, it's not really a spoiler. I'm not going to go into details about what. One could say Tinstra also has PTSD. And it's almost a good character study. You can actually see how it affects both characters in very different ways, particularly the Tinstra from the second half of this novel and Jax throughout this novel are two characters who have very different approaches to their past traumas. And man, it's just, you feel for them. I mean, I don't personally have PTSD, at least none that I'm aware of, but man, you really feel for Jax through this novel. It's an incredible read. And the craziest thing is Dren. Dren is the teenage anarchist in this series who was insufferable. I hated him for like 90% of the first novel. He just had a chip on his shoulder, ready to fight everyone. I'm not going to lie, he was my favorite character in this. He was my least favorite character in the first novel, and he's my favorite character in the second novel. That is one hell of character growth. It's impressive. There are some new characters thrown in the fray, including Relassus, who is a playboy ship captain for one of the neighboring nations, as well as Franson, who is the one of the antagonists within this novel. I will say that Franson is not quite as memorable or as powerful of an antagonist as Darius was in We Are the Dead. Darius was just such a powerful villain that it was going to be hard to top that. Franson's not bad. He has some very interesting very interesting aspects to his powers. Hey, there's Franson's name right there. Very interesting aspects to what he can do. But I felt like his character wasn't central enough to too many of the storylines. He really only comes into play with one of the storylines or one of the other main point of view characters. I guess two, really. But yeah, I don't know. He wasn't as central of a villain as he could have been. Bacchus, for example, who is the villain whose mask is shown here on the cover, was not a point of view character, but I almost wish that he was a point of view character. He would have been, I feel like, a stronger overall antagonist. He has some downright crazy ass powers. But he's more so regulated to be like a background character or a side character. Finally, the other main character that we're introduced to is Matthion, who is actually an Egral soldier. So, the big baddies from up north, you're actually getting the point of view of one of their soldiers, and not like a main villain soldier like Darius or Franson. No, he is a foot soldier. And I'm not gonna lie, I actually kind of liked him being here. As a character. It added a sense of depth, so you're not just facing masked, faceless enemies. You actually have a character whose shoes you're in, a character who's actually sympathetic to this holy war that Egral is undertaking here in Jaya. But yeah, A Fool's Hope is still a solid follow-up. Like I said, I didn't really feel that this suffered from middle novel syndrome, unlike other various novels can with the good old trilogy, where the middle novel is just treading water until the third, to the conclusion. In fact, I would say most of the characters in this novel are still facing some solid character development. They're pushing forward with their own storylines. The first novel was almost epic in a way that everyone had their own storylines all over the place and they all kind of came together. This one is kind of unique in that most of them start together and then you see them sort of branch out a bit. Many of them will still overlap here and there and then come on back, but you can tell that it's building up to that all coming on back with the third novel. I will say, yes, there is definitely some open-ended storylines at the end of this novel, which are going to have to be concluded in the third title, which is called Until the Last. But that is to be expected with any middle novel. That's not necessarily middle novel syndrome. So I will say that it may not have been as strong of a novel as We Are the Dead, but I think it's still one hell of a grimdark read, and I think it's still absolutely worth checking out. If you liked We Are the Dead, you should hopefully still like A Fool's Hope. If you did not like We Are the Dead, then I'm sad to say that this second novel probably isn't going to change your mind on this trilogy. I do think We Are the Dead was just absolute 5-star read. This is still, maybe a 4-star read. It's still very strong. But it's still a very strong novel, even if it wasn't as good as its predecessor. But, unfortunately, We Are the Dead, to me at least, set the bar pretty high. Before I get into the spoiler territory, I must say this is the hardcover edition, of which there's only 1,000 copies, which is an absolute travesty. I think like Grim Oak Press or Subterranean Press really needs to give this trilogy a nice hardcover edition, for especially the folks here in the U.S. However, you can pick up a signed paperback copy directly from the Broken Bindings website. Link in the description below if you want a signed paperback copy. But if you do want a hardcover copy, you will have to go to the secondary market because there's only 1,000 copies, and only 999 of them are potentially for sale in the secondary market because I'm keeping mine. So anyways, thank you very much for watching this spoiler-free part of the book review. I will be doing a book review, also spoiler-free, for the third title once I have finished reading that. It'll probably be in 2 weeks, just because I'm most of the way through, but I don't know if I'll have it done in time for a video next week. Anyways, thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing to the channel. I do at least one book review a week on Tuesdays, plenty of unboxing videos in between here and there. I will give you about 20 seconds to hop off now before I go into some spoiler territory to discuss something that might be a little more controversial in the novel that happens about halfway through. So at the 9:45 mark is where I'm going to go into spoiler territory. Slight spoilers. I'm not going to, give you any plot details. But anyways, here we go. I'm not going to give away the ending. I'm not going to give away huge chunks of plot, but there is one aspect in particular that I do want to talk about, and that is the trope that is used to help the Princess Zorik grow, quite literally. So as you might know from the first novel, I can't remember if I told you the first novel or not, Zorik is the princess of Jaya. She is the future, but she has magical abilities which have not, so the world here is run by magic that is powered by Chikara water. And the water supply is running low, so those who have magical abilities aren't really able to use it to their fullest anymore. But Zorik, the 4-year-old princess who is on the run in the protection of Tinstra, does have magic in her blood. She won't need the Chikara water. However, she's only 4. What are you going to do? Well, the book has an answer to that, and the answer is time travel. Yes, so there are, these passage gates, these portal gates that can bring you from one place to another. And they have learned that they can use these to not only travel from one place to another, but a place that's in the past. And so Tinstra and Zorik and the people that are with her in the party wind up 1,000 years in the past. That way they can have her grow up and learn to harness her powers. So they spend over a decade. They spend close to 15 years in the past. And I know some people are going to roll their eyes because time travel is a little bit of a gimmick. But I thought it was done decently. There are some actions in the past that should definitely have consequences. I'm kind of curious to see if Mike Shackle has an explanation for them not having consequences, because these actions don't seem to affect the main storyline we know. It's very possible it might just be an explanation of, instead of being one timeline and causing a paradox, it could be multiple branches in a timeline, so these actions might, for lack of a better word, fuck over this other timeline, whereas it might still save their own. I don't know. That's the way I'm interpreting it. That's the way I'm going to view it. That way you're not going to have any potential paradox problems. So fair warning, if you don't like time travel being used as a plot point or a plot device, you might not like the second half of this novel. I thought it was interesting. I legitimately did not see that coming. There was really no indication leading up to this that it's going to have almost a little sci-fi element. It is still very much a grimdark novel, but I can see that possibly throwing some readers off. I enjoyed it, and especially with what it built up to, which is just an absolute chaotic final act, last 100 pages, when all hell breaks loose. I thought it paid off well. Like I said, I was still a little disappointed with Franson as a villain in general. I felt like he wasn't as central as Darius was. Bacchus, wasn't in the novel nearly enough to be a powerful villain. But having the faceless eagle just throughout the whole novel definitely served decently enough for the antagonists. It definitely makes me still want to read Until the Last, and I'm blasting through that as quickly as I can because I can't get enough of it. Mike Shackle's trilogy, I'm in love with it so far. Listen, I'm about halfway done with Until the Last. It's a big novel, so that's it's like saying you're halfway through the dictionary. So anyways, like I said, I wanted to get a little spoiler territory, kind of give my thoughts on that. I'll probably do the same thing with Until the Last. Let me know what you thought of the novel if you've read it in the comments below. Very much love to hear your opinion on it. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you around next time.